Welcome back now to the latest in Mississippi, where hundreds of families are still reeling after what's being called the largest immigration raid ever in a single state. Children and spouses emotional, fearful, and left with few answers as 400 or so remain in custody. Joining me now from Morton, Mississippi is NBC's Gabe Gutierrez, and Julia Ainsley is in Washington for us. Gabe, I'm going to start with you on this one. You've been talking to some families who are affected by these raids. What are you learning, Gabe?
Hi, Yasmin. Well, yes, it's an extremely emotional time for many of the families in this community. I'm standing in front of one of the food processing plants where ICE agents rounded up workers suspected of being undocumented on Wednesday. Since then, some of these family members have had no idea where their loved ones are. We spoke just a short time ago with one undocumented worker who works at another plant. He just narrowly missed being rounded up, he says, because he was on another shift at the plant and so wasn't there when the ICE agents were there, but he's terrified to go back to work. We spoke with another woman who broke down in tears describing how her husband was rounded up. She has several kids that she's now trying to take care of on her own while she tries to find out where he is. Now, we know, according to federal authorities, that the people who were detained are the ones that are still detained, about 400 or so, are at several facilities here in Mississippi as well as Louisiana, but the families we've spoken with have not been able to get a hold of them. So I want to tell you about a young girl that we met, 18 years old. Her name is Stephanie. She says she's been in the country for several years, but she says that her younger sister, who is just 3 years old, was in the car when her father was detained by ICE agents, the father dropping off his sister at one of these plants. She is devastated. She found out the news while she was at school. We just spoke with her this morning. Take a listen.
I was so sad. I was like, why my dad, if he really works hard, he's the important part of the family. Right now, my family is not okay. So it's really hard because, you know, I never miss school. But I really wanted to know something about him, and I don't want to be at school and if I don't know anything about him.
How scared are you right now?
I'm scared because I'm really scared because I don't know what to do.
So these families, many of them are beside themselves. There are volunteers asking how they can help some of these families. Some of the local churches have started taking donations, and some of them, as we saw yesterday, there was a 1-year-old baby girl that we saw in this church left there by her father while he tried to find his wife, who was rounded up in these immigration raids. So certainly the president calling it a deterrent a short time ago. No matter what you think of the policy of this administration, whether or not this should have been done, the fact is, here on the ground in Mississippi, this is having some very real consequences and impact for many families here in this community.
Right.
Yasmin?
Policy or not, this is these children's realities, like Stephanie, like her 3-year-old sister, like the 1-year-old Gabe that you mentioned. So, Julia, I want to go to you with your new published piece on NBCNews.com, and you titled it, "What ICE Did and Did Not Do for Kids Left Behind by Mississippi Raids." Those kids, some of those kids who Gabe mentioned. What'd you find out?
Well, Gabe has the reality on the ground. I'm talking to officials here in Washington who are saying, here's what we did to try to ameliorate some of the suffering. But they say that there was no way they could have done everything to notify schools, to notify Child Protective Services without tipping off immigrants of what their plans were. And they didn't want to do that before a law enforcement operation. Some of the things they did do, they said that some of the parents were released with very young children. These were parents who were arrested and were released actually at the work site, not taken into detention. And then later, some 270 immigrants were released, and they say a lot of those were released because of custody determinations. If an immigrant expressed that they were the only one able to care for their child. And they were also given a phone call. They said that an undocumented immigrant in this country should have a plan anyway for where their child should go if they were arrested. But, you know, the question is, what can you do with one phone call? Do you notify the relative, or do you notify your child that things are going to be okay? So there are a lot of questions there. And then as far as Child Protective Services and the schools, we understand that Child Protective Services in Mississippi were not told to plan for this, and they say that they wish they had known so they could better do their job. And I spoke to some ICE officials who said, yes, there is a case in the past, and very regularly. If you go knock on the door of a family and you plan to arrest the parents and you know there will be children left behind, you often will bring someone, a child welfare worker, so that you can arrange for those children to go into custody, whether it's with a relative or into the foster system, something to make sure those children have someone to take care of them at night. And in this case, because they do this on such a massive scale, you can't possibly determine that for everyone. So these officials said, no, we cannot guarantee that all of these children now have a place to go, but we did our best. And I think what really brought this home to me is they said, we are not a social services agency. We are a law enforcement agency, which shows you the way they see their mission here and that it was not their job to make sure that these children had a place to go home to.
All right, Julia, Gabe, thank you both. So we have new questions over the immigration status of employees working for the Trump Organization. The Washington Post reporting that a little-known company owned by the president has continued to use undocumented workers for projects on his property. This despite the Trump Organization promising more scrutiny on the legal status of its employees back in January. NBC News has reached out to the White House for a response to this story and has not yet heard back. Washington Post political reporter David Fahrenthold co-wrote the article. He's also an MSNBC political analyst. David, thanks for joining us on this last minute. Here's what you write. For nearly 2 decades, the Trump Organization has relied on a roving crew of Latin American employees to build fountains and waterfalls, sidewalks and rock walls at the company's winery and its golf courses from New York to Florida. Their ranks have included workers who entered the U.S. illegally, according to 2 former members of the crew. Another employee still with the company said that remains true today. What new reporting, David, do you have on these undocumented workers at Trump properties?
Well, what we've found here is that, as you said, 6 months ago, the Trump Organization said, oh, wow, we employed lots and lots of undocumented immigrants. We're now going to make an effort to find them and to fire them. They were trying sort of 4 years late to align what they did privately with what President Trump said everybody should do publicly. And what we found was that they didn't succeed. They didn't do that. While they fired some people from some of their golf clubs, this crew of workers that Trump has employed for a long time, they're very valuable. They know how to build Trump properties. At that crew, nothing changed. None of Trump's rhetoric, none of the purge and other parts of the company affected these folks, and undocumented workers stayed on.
So while you have these raids happening in Mississippi, the Trump Organization, these Trump properties still very much employing these undocumented workers. But Eric Trump telling the Post that the company was, quote, making a broad effort to identify any employee who has given false and fraudulent documents to unlawfully gain employment, saying any such individuals would be immediately fired. Your response to that, David?
Well, that's what Eric Trump said back in January, and they did fire at least 18 workers from their golf courses, people who'd worked for them in some cases for a decade or more, and the Trump Organization audited their paperwork and said, oh, these papers that you gave us 10 years ago were fraudulent, and fired them. What we found was that at this, we don't know what's going on at the whole company, but at this particular part of it, this in-house construction crew, when all that was happening, nothing changed. Their managers didn't tell them anything. They all kept working, and several of them were undocumented.
So, in speaking to some of these workers, have they at all expressed any nervousness about their own status, about being brought in by ICE?
They are nervous. Certainly they are. They're also, and they've taken some steps to sort of stay out of the limelight. But they're also upset by what they view as the hypocrisy of Donald Trump, bringing this level of scrutiny, this level of immigration enforcement, this level of rhetoric, this sort of invasion rhetoric at Latin American immigrants, at undocumented immigrants particularly, at the same time as he's relying on them to build the clubs that make him money. That's what's bringing them out here to talk about this, despite the risk.
And how has the Trump Organization responded to this most current report that you're putting out there?
Pretty minimally. They've responded by telling us, that their efforts to find undocumented workers continue, but they wouldn't answer our questions about how many undocumented workers they still employ and what they've done, beyond what they've made public already to try to make sure that they're living up to President Trump's rhetoric.
All right, David Fahrenthold, thank you so much. Good talking to you, David.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.